Good day, everyone, and welcome to our class. This is SS031, Understanding the Self, and our discussion for today will be concentrating on the psychological view of the self, my favorite mystery. Who in the world am I? That's a great puzzle. At least that is a quote that we can take from Alice in Wonderland. And at least in our discussion for the psychological view of the self, we will be looking intrinsically at how we will be able to understand ourselves from a psychological perspective. As we begin, let us first look at the learning outcomes for these course. First, we will discuss the different representations and conceptualizations of the self from a psychological perspective. Also, we will examine the different influences, factors, and forces that shape the psychological view of the self. Also, we will compare and contrast how the self has been represented across the psychological perspective, and we will demonstrate critical and reflective thought in analyzing the development of oneself and identity by developing a theory of the self. You see, most of the times we are too hard on ourselves because of our many expectations. We always want to be stable. We want to be in control and pleasing to others. Who we are, though, is not easily changed because it might be likened to a liquid, able to make forms depending on the factors and context affecting it. To help us understand ourselves a bit clearer and somehow ease the pressure of coming up with a definite answer to who we are, we will be looking into some of the theories and concepts in psychology regarding the self. You see, questioning who we are or engaging in self reflection to figure out and understand why we behave in a certain way is normal and is actually very much beneficial in increasing our self awareness. You see, introspection is both an informal reflection process and the formal experimental approach, but either process can be undertaken by anyone with curiosity and determination. Now, as we continue on, we will be looking at the concept of the self and the self concept. Now, when we speak of the self and our self concept, we speak of the organized, consistent set of perceptions of and beliefs about oneself. Now, these perceptions and beliefs that comprise our self concept are called as our self schemas. Now, when we speak of these self schemas, these are formed by numerous factors that we may be aware or unaware of, some of which are we speak of our past experiences, our personality traits, our abilities, our physical features, our values, our goals, our social roles, our own observations, and the feedback from others. Looking into each of the factors or self schemas that affect our self concept, what similar trait do you think may be the reason why our self concept can be fluid? One possible answer is that all factors are dynamic, ever changing in a way that grows, improves, or lessens as we go through life every day and expose ourselves to various interactions and media content. Now, Rogers asserted that we have two kinds of self. We have our ideal self and our real self. Now, this is according to humanistic psychologist Carl Rogers. The personality is composed again of the real self and the ideal self. Now, your real self is who you actually are, while your ideal self is the person you want to be. The ideal self is an idealized version of yourself created out of what you have learned from your life experiences, the demands of your society, and what you admire in your role models. For example, your parents are medical doctors who are respected and admired in the community, and experience tells you that in order to be happy, you need to be smart and have a high paying job. Now, your ideal self might be someone who excels in science subjects, spends a lot of time studying, and does not get queasy at the sight of the blood. If your real self is far from the idealized image that you might feel dissatisfied, you will feel dissatisfied with your life and consider yourself a failure. On your screen, you will see here the summarized version of what an ideal self is. Our ideal self is the person we want to be. the idealized version of ourselves or how we should be. While when we speak of our real self, this is who we actually are, how we see ourselves, and this is also called as our actual self. Our ideal self, again, is very much essential in guiding and motivating us to behave in a way that would lead us to the best version of who we want to be. While we also have the concept of the possible selves. Now, these are developed from past experiences, current behavior, and future expectations. Now, our possible selves represent individuals' ideas, our ideas of what we might become, what we would like to become, and what we are afraid of becoming. Thus, it provides a conceptual link between cognition and motivation. Now, our possible selves are the cognitive components of hopes, fears, goals, and threats. They give the specific self-relevant form, meaning, an organization and direction to these dynamics. It was suggested that possible selves function as incentives for future behavior and to provide an evaluative and interpretative context for the current view of the self. The nature and function of possible selves and their roles in addressing several persistent problems and malleability of the self, the unity of the self, self-distortion, the relationship of the self, and behavior are discussed. That's why when we speak of the possible self, these are one's conceptions about the kind of persons one might become in the near future. Now, sometimes possible selves are negative and represent what you fear, what you might become. Though negative, though, this still can help us in figuring out the ideal self that we want to become. However, it is best to keep in mind to focus on the positive and the person or goal to be achieved and not the person or goal to be avoided. Now, experiencing incongruence may happen from time to time about our ideal self and our real selves, most especially in cases or contexts that are new and extreme. We need to reflect and look into our behaviors and be reminded of our ideal self. Now, if the level of incongruence is too much to handle, causing a person's self-worth to be questionable, it is best to seek help through counseling or seeking advice from people who can help. It has been documented that there is a relationship between low self-esteem and violence, school dropout rates, teenage pregnancy, suicide, and low academic achievement. Now, our self-esteem is very much related to all of these factors. But when we speak of self-esteem, this refers to one's overall assessment of one's worth as a person, how we value ourselves and perceive our worth as a person. Now, there are specific elements of the self-concept that may contribute to self-esteem. These presents evidence that who we are is never defined by one success or in failure. It is always good to look into our self-esteem coming from these several boxes. You have our social self-image, our emotional self-image, our academic self-image, and our physical self-image. Now, these helps us categorize our victories and losses. Hopefully, a success from one box will not make us overconfident because we still need also to work on the other boxes. Say, for example, a failure also in one box will not mean a failure for all other boxes. Now, we also have the concept of self-efficacy. And when we talk about self-efficacy, this is how one performs and is directly correlated with self-esteem. When our self-efficacy or our performance improves, our self-esteem improves, which will lead to congruence. However, an increase in self-esteem does not always lead to increase to self-efficacy, most especially if no effort was exerted to improve performance. This is why we have to continuously remind ourselves to be motivated and put that motivation into action. For self-esteem and self-efficacy to increase, we have to learn to give unconditional positive regard to each other, hopefully other people. Those who matter to us have also and will provide us with positive regard. But in case that they do not directly state it, they might be saying it indirectly or implicitly. Maybe we just have to be sensitive and appreciative of the other means or languages used to express those appreciation. Now, if there's one program that we could all start that we would do wonders, that would do wonders for our self-esteem. It's abolishing needless self-criticism and punitive self-talk. It's just like we're punishing ourselves with words when we do bad or when we break it. And that program is definitely for free. You see, we are fortunate enough to have some degree, a high one at that, to help ourselves and make ourselves the ideal self that we want to become. The ideal does not always have to mean perfect. You see, life may be imperfect, that we can work with that and use it to our advantage. With this, we have to stop comparing ourselves to other people, especially to those lives we see in social media. Now, when you invest your time in developing yourself personally and professionally, you are role playing as a catalyst for self growth. Now, there are myriad skills investment avenues for this. For instance, we read the news and the books, expose our brain to creative ideas, or meet good people. We have the ability to improve ourselves. No matter what happened in the past, no matter what is happening right now, we can do something, no matter how little, to contribute to the future hope that we do have. Now, our psychological self is an aspect of ourselves that have immense impact on our entire being, on our present, on our future, our relationships, and the society we are a member of. Now, when we speak of the psychological view of the self, we have to understand that self-awareness is essential in taking care of our psychological self. Being informed of what affects and what make our self-concept will enable to protect ourselves and to process information or influences better. We will never be able to avoid negative experiences, but we can always choose to learn from them and use it to our advantage and for our improvement. Now, we have to understand that if we are to create our ideal self, we have to focus on the good and the positive. This will be a good motivation for our real self to strive to attain, not for revenge or to pull down others, but for the greater good. Our self-esteem may dwindle from time to time, but we can get back on track. As long as we are given the gift of life, we just have to decide every day to invest in ourselves. Hopefully, we can help others as we learn how to take better care of their psychological selves as well. This wraps up then our discussion on the psychological view of the self. Thank you for joining us for our class today. Have a safe day, everyone, and God bless us all.